A lot of people ask me how I got my start in photography, and this story is actually a little different than I think that most people expect. My senior year of high school, I was kind of going through a tough time. I quit the one sport that I'd held on to and that had brought me a lot of joy up until that point. About a year previously, I lost my grandmother suddenly. And I think that in hindsight, this kind of affected everything that happened from this point forward. I didn't really know where to turn. And my senior year, I took a photography class because it was an elective that I had to take. I immediately fell in love. It was this place for me to put these things that I was feeling into, and I had no idea how to say these things, but photography gave me a way to talk about them. Fast forward to my first semester of college, I had elected to be a biology major, and I had taken 18 units my first semester of intro bio classes and chemistry classes. At the end of the semester, I remember just feeling overwhelmed, and I went to the gym one day and I came home, and for whatever reason, my heart rate just wouldn't go down. It felt like I was still working out and like I was still running, and yet I was sitting on this couch doing nothing. And I kind of waited there and just kind of watched and observed what was happening inside of my body and started to panic a little bit. It wasn't changing. In fact, it was just getting faster. Eventually, I told my parents, and that brought me to the hospital. On the outside, I might have seemed emotionless. I was a little bit scared, but on the inside, I was absolutely terrified. There was this panic and this fear that had set in inside of me because I didn't know what was happening. Was something wrong with my heart? Was something wrong with me? Was I about to find out that something was wrong with me? After what seemed like an eternity in the hospital and a bunch of tests, I found out that I was normal. My potassium levels were low. But other than that, I was pretty much fine. The next morning I woke up terrified that the same thing was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. So I went back to the hospital again. They did the same round of tests plus a few more tests. And again, everything came back normal. They sent me home. They referred me out to a cardiologist, a specialist in the workings and the anatomy and the physiology of a heart. And that was it. From this point forward, things got incredibly hard. I was absolutely terrified to be in my own body. It was as if I couldn't trust my own body. I would sit on the couch for hours reading because the reading distracted me. I remember reading Harry Potter at that time, and that was one of the only things that would distract me from the sensations of my body, from my heart pounding. I could feel every single heartbeat. Every movement inside of my body just became so prominent. Even getting up, just walking to the bathroom was terrifying because I could feel my heart rate elevate as soon as I stood up and as soon as I started taking those steps to walk across the house. This is what anxiety feels like for me. This fear, this just uncertainty about your own body, this feeling of being unsafe, this unpredictability of what is going to happen, what sensation am I going to feel that is going to set me off, that is panic inducing, that is going to create fear within inside of me. At that point, nobody had said anything to me about anxiety. Nobody mentioned anything about mental health. I had no knowledge of mental health at the time. I was a biology major. I was pre-med, and I was studying to potentially be a doctor. And yet mental health and anxiety and depression were never brought up, ever. Eventually, my mom, who's a nurse, finally had the idea and this inkling that maybe I needed to go talk to somebody. Maybe I needed to go see a psychologist. Looking back, there was so much stigma that was attached to that. There's so much fear about, am I crazy because I'm going to go do this, because I need to go talk to somebody. And now, these days, that seems absolutely absurd. But at the time, having no knowledge, having no experience in any of this, it was foreign and it was scary. I had to essentially relearn how to do everything. I had to relearn how to drive. Just even taking walks around the block were an internal roller coaster. Feeling all the sensations and being able to feel everything at such a hypersensitive level was overwhelming. Eventually, I was confident enough to go out and start to resume daily life. It just so happened that this all coincided with winter break, and second semester was starting up for me. At this time, I was learning to kind of talk about everything, but for me, it was so inherently physical that I was only talking about the physical side of it, and yet there was so much more depth to what was actually going on with me. And at this point, this is where photography had come in, because I had kept up photography and it began to be the only way for me to express what was going on inside of my body, inside my internal world. Photography was a way in which for me to say the things I needed to that I couldn't with words. It became a way for me to express the things that were going on. And as I would do that, it would relieve the tension, the weight that I was carrying around with me. Each time that I would create a photo, it was like letting go and releasing this part of me that needed to be let go. And even though I wasn't very good at the time, the images in my brain that I would come up with weren't exactly what I would end up creating. But at the same time, it wasn't about the end result. It wasn't about how close I could get at that time. It was about the process, because the process allowed me to get in touch with who I was, what I was feeling, and to give myself something that I needed. It's been 10 years since I started this journey, and it has taught me so much about myself, about who I am, about what I need, and about the artist that I want to be. The short film in the beginning depicts what anxiety feels like for me. It depicts this person that on the outside may seem okay, may seem maybe just a little bit off, but on the inside, in this internal world that is so vivid and so fearful at times, it can be just a completely different world and a completely different experience than what is actually being shown on the outside. Anxiety can be incredibly debilitating. Trust me, I know from firsthand experience. I know that it can be so scary, that it can cause so much fear inside of you. I didn't want to leave my house, and I was terrified to do things that I'd already done before in my life. There's a few things that I did that helped me so incredibly much. In the beginning, I researched and I did so much in the way of trying to figure out what I could do to help cure myself and to help get myself out of that hole. And the first is that you do not have to cure yourself. Anxiety is a normal part of you. It may not be a normal reaction to the extent at which it is, but everybody feels anxiety to some extent. One of the most important things and the most essential things is breathing, learning how to breathe, learning diaphragmatic breathing, how to breathe from your stomach rather than your chest. And that is such a critical thing, because that can ground you in those moments of panic and fear. And it can also help to calm you when you start to feel the edge of anxiety come along, when you start to feel overwhelmed, just really in everyday life. Not just if you have some sort of depression or anxiety. It doesn't even have to be like that. It can be just if you're feeling overwhelmed in a normal day. Another thing that helps to work on your breathing as well at the same time is meditation, using apps like Calm. Calm has been a savior for me. I think I've meditated somewhere around over 900 sessions. When I meditate regularly, I see huge improvements in my mood, in the patience that I have, in my ability to move throughout a day and not let little things set me off, not let them overwhelm me, not let them derail my mood, and my just overall resiliency to things that happen in normal life has increased. Anytime that I ever experience anxiety at heightened levels, or I'm going through a very stressful time in my life, there is this routine that I've come up with that I just default to immediately. The next day, I am drinking water. Water is essential to this. It helps to just feel better in general. I start drinking water. I start trying to eat healthier, trying to get rid of sugar. I don't drink caffeine, and I haven't had large amounts of caffeine in probably 9 or 10 years now. That is one for me that has just, I don't need it. Meditation, I immediately go to meditating. I make sure that I meditate first thing in the morning, and at least 10 minutes, ideally 20 minutes. But you take what you can get and be kind to yourself about what it is that you do. But meditating in the beginning of the day helps to kind of set the tone for the rest of the day. In the times where I had sleep problems, meditating at night helps so incredibly much. Trust me, if you have not tried it, please give it a try. Exercise for me is absolutely critical. Exercising helps to get some of that pent-up energy, that tension, and to help release that a little bit. And find whatever exercise for you works. Maybe it's running, maybe it's on the bike, maybe it's outdoors for any one of those. Maybe it's an elliptical, maybe you're lifting weights. There's so many ways to exercise. You do not have to be an elite athlete when you're doing this. Even walking 10 minutes on a treadmill is enough, especially if you come from doing nothing. Something is better than nothing. And lastly, talk. Talk to someone. Find someone who you trust. Find someone who you can confide in, whether that's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it is a psychologist. Go and talk to somebody, because talking to another human being who can just hold space for you, who can be there for you, who cannot judge you for what you're saying and not force their opinions on you, there is something so therapeutic about that. It will help you to release some of the stress that you have. And that's kind of my checklist of things that I go down when I go through super anxious and super stressful times in my life. Ultimately, it's my body telling me that I'm lacking something, that I need something, or maybe I need to spend a little bit more time with myself and sitting with myself to ask myself those questions and to figure out what the answers are to that. And usually when I find out what that is and begin to give myself that attention, that's when the anxiety starts to subside. It is such a counterintuitive experience in the beginning to have this physical sensation that needs a physical answer, right? But really, the physical side of it is so intertwined with your emotional well-being, with your mental state, with the things and the traumas that you've experienced within your life, and how you process each one of those things. If you have other practices and rituals that you go through when you experience anxiety, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'm sure that it would help other people. So that's going to be it for me. Again, I hope this helps you. I share my story so that maybe it can bring comfort to those who are just experiencing this or have been experiencing this for a while, and knowing that you're not alone, knowing that what you feel is not as rare and is not as detrimental to your well-being as you think, is just super helpful. So my name is David Roscoe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Dude, you're ruining the shot.